the old stages within governing bodies are very anti-sevens because they see it as a threat, not as the positive thing it can be. Because I think if sevens brings people into rugby, who cares as long as it gets them into rugby? Because rugby is everything, and everybody loves instant gratification at the moment. Really. It's the way of the world and bite size, and sevens gives you that in spades. I'm Damian McGrath, and welcome to the Hive.
He's so dangerous. Freddy Krueger has nightmares about him.
Hello and welcome to the Rugby Hive. I'm Dallen, Stanford, and despite my South African accent, I was fortunate enough to play rugby for the United States on the Sevens World Series.
And I'm Mcdougal, a former Canadian Sevens international. Back in my playing days, I went head-to-head against Dallen in the USA.
For several years, Robin has coached international sevens for various countries, including Canada and Mexico. He's massively passionate about growing the game across the Americas through his McDowell rugby programs at all levels. I'm currently a commentator for World Rugby, most recently broadcasting the Rugby World Cup in Japan, as well as the amazing Sevens World Series.
More than a decade later, we are teaming up to bring you insights from legendary players and coaches from around the world.
All legends have a story. The Rugby Hive podcast is here to share it.
Welcome to the Hive.
Oh, he's more dangerous than climate change.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Rugby Hive, Episode 27, coming at you live and loud, brought to you by Wintergreen and partners World Rugby Shop and Gilbert Rugby Canada. We've been busier than Edward Scissorhand giving a neck massage, and of course the complaints are flying in with those massage therapists. But a lot has happened since we dropped Episode 25 and 26 of Season 2. We've had guests, the legendary Cecil Africa, followed by the great Moonlights, Dave and John. But before we crack into this episode, Robin, we're thrilled to see the franchise expansion of the Rugby Hive. An elite group who escaped from a maximum security stockade into the Los Angeles underground. Today, still wanted by the government. They survive as soldiers of fortune. And we add your wife to that elite group, presenting Sam MacDowell. Congrats, my friend.
Thanks, brother. It was a beautiful week and a very special weekend with all our friends and family. We're lucky with the pandemic that we were able to have our party and fun to get married.
Well, congrats, man. It's awesome to see the photos. I know Vera and I would have joined you there. We had some rugby stuff get in the way, but it looked bloody sensational. So tell us what you've been up to the last little while. It's been a while since we caught up, pal.
Well, I had camps in Prince Rupert. I think I shared on the last episode. In northern BC. It was a lot of fun, and then obviously camp on Vancouver Island. And then I shut it down for August. It was full wedding mode, obviously, and had good friends, guys that I played on the circuit with, and just good rugby colleagues from across the country come in for the wedding. And we went out fishing on the West Coast. I think you saw some of the good sized Chinooks. So we got some of our mainlander Canadian boys into some what we call Thais, fish that are over 25 pounds. So we had a beautiful day on the West Coast, and it's just been really, really family mode. And we're just ramping up as we get into the fall here for the launch of the MacDowell Rugby Island Academy. So I already have our girl Erica Kissinger from Texas. She's already on the ground here on Vancouver Island, and we got other athletes coming in from Canada. So that's really our focus now.
And I want to say your logo is on point with your branding. You've just released a couple of new things. Where can folks get more information? Where can they sign up? Where can they follow you, pal?
MacDowellRugby.ca. You can get all your rugby T-shirts with salmon on them, and on the prairies with bison on them, or buffalo if you're in America. So yeah, thank you.
Good. Can't wait. Well, we also had a busy time. Vera and I were in London for a few weeks. We got to see my sister there and meet our nephew for the first time. He's 1 year old. He's got great rugby skills. Pretty much be a Sevens World Series standout, I think, in a few years to come. And then work-wise, pal, we obviously had a great MLR season this side, and it was superb to be involved with the Eastern Conference champions, Rugby ATL. And then they flew to Los Angeles, and LA dominated the final. The Giltinis, the first champions. We even had some Canadian legends involved, DTH van der Merwe. They partied hard. 3 days on the trot in Vegas. It looked like Adam Ashley Cooper and Matt Ghetto and the folks were getting out there. The Tiger King was loose. It looked sensational.
We need to get on that support staff.
Exactly. Tattoos were flying as well. It was all happening. Then the Rugby Town Sevens, obviously are one of our favorite events every year, and it was so great to have you coach and play last time in 2019. We had 62 games, 3 epic days. It was so great to be there in person finally, at a live event here in the US. $10,000 up for grabs. Samurai, who fielded 12 South African players, dominated the final in the end. They had players, 2 Olympians, Angelo David and Taku Makata, plus 3 other World Sevens Series players. Dewald Human, who's as small as a handbag, was player of the tournament. And a bunch of youngsters, as always, featuring, like we saw in 2019, the Mullet Man, and then a new player on the shot, the Canadian Rocket. Tell us more.
Yeah, Lucas Scheck, he's about as Canadian as it gets. He's from the heartland of Canada, Macklin, Saskatchewan, farm boy. Now, there's a famous hockey school in Canada. It's called Notre Dame Hounds. And he's like a 3rd-generation Hound. His 3 older sisters went there. His dad went there. I think his grandparents went there. And anyway, I was coaching one of his older sisters a few years ago with our provincial team. And I spotted this kid. He was like 14. He's just like this jack little guy. You're talking about that Angelo guy. I'm like, he's going to be a rugby player. And he never touched the ball. The next year we got him in the team. And his mom's like, he's not going to make the team. And I'm like, I'm the head coach. I'm like, he's going to make the team. And then she's like, yeah, he probably won't play. I'm like, he's going to play. And he got player of the tournament, scored the most tries. But he's one of these guys that are, again, in North America, they're a diamond in the rough, multi-sport athlete. And they just need an opportunity. So we had a trade with the Pride this past Christmas. And he went around Kenwa Lloyd one-on-one, the 15s Canada sevens and 15 star. And Frankie Horn took him to Utah last month, and he tore it up in Utah. And so we sent him down there with the North American Lions. And first touch of the ball, well, you sang the rest of it once he got the ball.
It was amazing. I mean, to see somebody 18 years young, have the confidence to go around, experienced veterans. Sometimes the moment is too big for the player, not for the Canadian Rocket. It was so fun. You'd give me the spice and the scoop so I could at least sing his praises, and he delivered. He certainly delivered. So that was fantastic. One of many players that come through that tournament, of course. But there's opportunities coming up with more rugby on the horizon. So why don't you give us a brief breakdown? What are you going to be up to in the next couple of months?
The most exciting thing, and I think I've been waiting for it as a player, coach, and a fan, but the Premier Sevens, first professional sevens league in North America, kicking off October 9th in Memphis, Tennessee. What a great location. Country music, cowboy boots, and rugby. Nothing I could ask more of. And Lucas Scheck, the Canadian Rock, will be featured there, playing alongside or against Perry Baker, Carlin Isles, and those types. And also women. So they're going to have four women's sides, and 6 men's sides are going to be evenly distributed. It'll be streamed live on Fox Sports across the USA and TSN across Canada. So that's really exciting. And then actually, Lucas just called me this morning. The legend Frankie Horn just invited him to play in Portugal at a World Tens competition. So this kid is now global. And for me, it's just another avenue for North American Canadians and American kids, that aren't quite in the MLR, aren't quite in that national scope, to get an opportunity to showcase. And I'm looking forward to being involved in both projects this fall outside of our academy.
Oh, that's so great. I mean, Portugal, Tens, Frankie Horn, as you said, the sevens here in the US and North America, in Memphis. I hope to be commentating that one and see you there. That's going to be absolutely electric. And so great that we have had the success of MLR for 3 to 4 years, and now the seven starts professionally. That's really going to have a huge impact in rugby in Canada and the US, obviously. You mentioned all the stars playing. They'll be featured probably one international legend on each side, which would be really cool to see that. Pal, and then otherwise on my side, we have the Rugby World Cup qualifiers, your country against our country here, USA, Canada, 2-leg series. Hopefully, we'll see how things go. I'll be commentating the second leg of the series, which will be in Denver at Rugby Town, USA, Canada, to see who will represent the North American #1 seed. And then the match after that is October 2nd here at the Infinity Park again. Whoever wins that will face Uruguay, and the team that loses that will face Chile. So there's still chances to qualify for those 2 seeds. So we'll see how things go in the next month. And then, of course, don't forget, it's going to be the Sevens World Series finally coming up. Vancouver Sevens, Edmonton Sevens in your neck of the woods. We'll have a Rugby Hive reunion. We'll get everybody out for it. It's been a long time. The last event we commented on the Sevens World Series was the Vancouver Sevens in March 2020. So it's been ages, and things are finally here. So can't wait to get back with the crew, get on the horn, and get the sevens. We'll obviously have 4 women's teams competing in a fast 4, and then 12 men's teams as well going head to head. So Rob, that's going to be exciting in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you. And we got a special guest. The Gaz is flying in just for the Vancouver Sevens, and she'll be actually on Vancouver Island. She's going to bring her son to our academy for the week as well. So looking forward to having the Gaz, the 3 of us in person. We'll only be missing Mr. Gallings, but we'll catch up with them later, hopefully next year.
Yeah, that'll be wonderful to see. And then, Paul, let's crack into episode 27 with Damian McGraw. I got a chance to see him recently, actually, at the Rugby Town Sevens. He brought Team Germany there, and it's just fascinating to see. I knew they would be structured, I knew they would be solid, but they really played above their expectations for the rest of the world. Really, really took note. They beat the Jetsters in pool play, which is obviously one of the favorite teams. They came the defending champions from 2019. And Damian was saying, it's really challenging working with the German side because at least 6 of these teams are soldiers. The rest of them have day jobs as well. So they train first thing in the morning, they go work a full day, and then they train again. So it's really tough for these players, but I really thought they delivered the goods. Damian was excellent, always composed, and it was really cool to see him face-to-face at a live tournament. His side didn't win gold, but they finished in the top 4. So they had really good practice before their launch into the Vancouver and Edmonton Sevens. We will get a chance to shout their praises there again. But Robs, tell us how you know Damian and your thought behind getting him on the Rugby Hive.
I first met Damian, obviously, when he was coaching the Canadian team, and he gave me my first opportunity to coach Canada with the junior national programs and the pathways set up through. And not only give me an opportunity to coach, he mentored me, and he's still one of my mentors. He's been there. I think he's coached 6 or 7 countries. He's down to earth, but he really instills a lot of confidence in his teams. Like you say, he's always composed, but he's a proven winner, right? Like I think the first tournament he took Germany to in South America, they won. They helped Canada win their first tournament. He won a tournament with Samoa. Like wherever he goes, he has that confidence. And when a coach has that confidence, the players build that confidence. So we'll be looking for them to break some hearts in Vancouver. And to the point, as far as his players being in the military or army, call me old school, but I think in our day, we all had day jobs, right? And if you look at the Fijiana teams, they kind of get on with it. A lot of the tier 1 nations, they're professionals. Essentially, they have their rugby's their job. But you know what? I used to be on the end of a shovel all summer and work during the school year, and then I would go away and play in the World Series. And we just got on with it. So you've got a bit of dirt under your knuckles. We're playing rugby, not chess. So if anything, it's a positive for that team. And I'm definitely excited to see him back on the World Series and bringing Germany back to Canada. So there'll be a good plot there, I think, on his return to the North Country.
Yeah, it certainly will be. Can't wait to see that. Well, we want to thank everybody as always for tuning in. Our listeners have been fantastic at the Rugby Hive. Brought to you by Wintergreen. I've been using their products, pre-workouts, post-workouts, even just getting out of bed when the back pricks. It's for all athletes, non-athletes, regular citizens like myself. You can visit wintergreensport.com. And they're a proud partner of USA Rugby, Major League Rugby, and of course, our title partner at the Rugby Hive. And then, of course, if you haven't heard, we have a brilliant clothing line at World Rugby Shop. We're wearing the kit right now. We're sporting the stuff. There's so many brilliant items you can get for your missus, for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for your kids. It's certainly splendid to see it. So click on worldrugbyshop.com and you can type in Rugby Hive in the search bar and you can get all your kit there. Then we even have a rugby ball at Gilbert Rugby Canada. Visit them at gilbertrugbycanada.com. It is sensational, designed by Robin himself. It's a passing, kicking, scoring rugby ball. It's electric, and you can look like an eel with that thing in hand. And then we have Canada Biltong up for grabs. I haven't seen Canada Biltong yet. I'm foaming at the mouth. Robin, tell us more.
Again, another South African popping out of nowhere, but Paul Bennett, he's just started this project, Canada Biltong. I've been coaching his exciting young son, Matt Bennett, and I've got 2 packages from them now. Don't tell Karen, but with all my fishing adventures, it's perfect. I'm a sucker for biltong and jerky, and so I recommend checking out CanadaBiltong.com. And I've been devouring it. It's a dream come true to have biltong as a sponsor.
The irony that you getting it that side, I'm not here as the token South African here. We also want to thank our wordsmith and journalist. You mentioned it, Karen Gasbarino, the Gaz, as she's known. She's been penning some brilliant stories recently, so you can check out therugbyhive.com and you can check out her stories there. And the legend Ben Gollings has joined us for several video episodes. His insights in the world of 7s and 15. He'll be with us soon again, and we'll get him on with a few more guests coming up. And it's superb to be featured on the Rugby Network, which is home for Rugby North America at therugbynetwork.com. Check out our socials at Rugby Hive on Twitter and Facebook, at MyRugbyHive on Instagram. And I mentioned our website, rugbyhive.com. Time now for Season 2, Episode 27 with Damian McGraw.
Alrighty, well, thrilled to be back recording in 2021. And nobody better than the great Damian McGrath. Welcome to the Rugby Hive, Damian.
A real pleasure, Robin. Good to speak to you and you, Dallen.
All right. Well, how are you holding up during COVID, and how's your lovely wife, Deb, doing?
Well, I think Deb's doing okay. She's back in the UK working. I must admit, I'm finding it much harder in Germany on my own than I did first time round. The novelty of lockdown wore off a long time ago, and there's nothing open, no shops, no bars, no restaurants, no cafes. So it's work, and then I come back and sit in this little kitchen that I'm in now and wait for the next day to happen. So it can't end soon enough, this pandemic.
And how's that affected the German team lately? I know you had some games in before Christmas and that was Spain, but what's a day in the life like now?
We've been very lucky. We've continued to train more or less, right through. The downside is that we've been all dressed up and nowhere to go. We've been available to play, but nobody to really play against. And as good as it is to train, you train for a reason. You need an end product, and that's been the hardest part. We trained, and it's hard to manage the players, how they train and what they're training for when we're just filling in time, really. But we've enjoyed it. It's allowed us to be active, and we played Spain in some successful games before Christmas. But apart from playing, games between the regions in the country, nothing else.
I feel like I've been preparing for COVID for the last decade, as you know, spending time with the Canadian prairies and training indoors with no competition because it's -40 and 10 feet of snow. So that's kind of set me up for success. But I know what you mean. It's tough on the coaches, but it's definitely tough on the players too, because they're just training with no targets. And I know it's been a replan as far as the next competition, and even the ones that we thought were in pen are still in pencil. So let's just dive back to your earlier playing days. Damo, how'd you get into rugby, and what other sports did you play growing up?
I played everything. I came from a really sporty family. I think I'm a classic example of that jack of all trades, master of none. I love every sport. Football, soccer to you guys, but football is king in most of the world, and particularly where I grew up, everybody wanted to be a footballer, and I follow football religiously. Manchester United's my team. Cricket is huge for us. My youngest brother Anthony played for England. He was a Test cricketer, played one-day internationals. He's now the head coach of the English county champions. The version of the cricket premierships. So he's forging a successful coaching career for himself. So cricket's dear to my heart. If there was a ball involved, I love to play. Rugby was. I grew up next to. I don't know if you follow the Super League, Rugby League in England, but Bradford Bulls are one of the big names in Super League, and I was born and brought up within a stone's throw of the stadium, and spent my youngest years sneaking in through the fence to watch games. Back in the day, and so rugby's always been a part of my life. And I went to a rugby school, an all-boys grammar school, where they only played rugby union, strangely enough, even though all the boys, me included, played rugby league outside of school. And I suppose rugby took over because I was better at that than everything else. And, but like even then, as I was a good amateur player, and there was a strong local leagues where I played, and I was always a standout performer. I signed as a professional rugby league player, but I soon realised that I was making up the numbers more than anything else. I was never going to be as good as some of the great players around, and I suppose that was the first sort of push towards being a coach, because it always fascinated me what made the best players, and why were they better than me. Just looking to see what it was they did, how they did it, and even though rugby was different then, we were professional in that we were paid. It seems strange now with both codes of rugby being full time, but back then rugby union was very much amateur. Rugby league was professional in that everybody had a job, but you were paid to play as well. And I think I only got a place in the team because everybody else in my team was a coal miner, from the coal fields in Northern England, and I was good at the crosswords because I trained to be a teacher. So I think they always picked me in the match day squad because wherever we travelled to, they could rely on me to help with the crossword on the bus. So whatever it was that got me, and I was happy to do it. But all my rugby career, all I ever think about, it's memories, it's people. That's always the thing. And I can't remember any games I played really. I can remember the things around the games and the laughs we had, and you guys played, and what it's like. It's the whole experience. The game's great, but it's everything that goes with it. And I've always found rugby to be that, whichever code it was, that there's a friendship in rugby, and you can go to any country in the world, any city, and go to the local club and you'll be welcomed with open arms. And I found that about rugby right from the start. I suppose that's what drew me in, fully originally, and I've never managed to escape.
And then, listen, how did you get into that coaching role? You mentioned obviously sneaking into the grounds, and then eventually they paid you to be in the grounds to play professional. But then coaching, what was your first start? Do you remember the team you?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I became a teacher, strangely enough, because I'm almost pathologically shy. I suffer great, particularly when I was younger, from a lack of confidence, and I hated having to stand up and speak. So being a teacher seemed the most ridiculous thing I could do. But also and we're going back to the 1980s now, when I finished at university, it was the only way you could, if you weren't a professional footballer, you could be a full-time, working sport full-time, to be a PE teacher. So I thought that was the next best thing. If I wasn't going to be full-time sport, then I'll work in sport in another way in a full-time capacity. So I had a teaching background, and that sort of connection with what is it that makes great players great, or what is it makes the better players that little bit better than everybody else, allied to my teaching background, always seemed a natural fit. And the club I played at is called Batley. It was it's in the Championship now. It's not just outside Super League, but as I finished playing, they offered me the chance to become player coach for the reserve team, and we won the reserve team league in that first season. And as much as I'd like to say it was all about me, it was just one of those things. We had some good older players finishing, and things went well. And like everything, I think in sport, and you guys know, it's not as much what you know as who you know, because if someone likes what they see, they recommend you, don't they? It's word of mouth. You rarely see people applying for a job and they get it based just on their written application. It's usually someone ringing, do you know anybody yet? Have you thought about this guy? So the head coach at Batley at the time, who'd moved on, was a coal miner called Paul Daly, one of these great natural philosophers, without realising he could do that. I presume you'd call him a mentor to me, because he just always had that really kitchen sink advice, really simple stuff. And he recommended me to the director of rugby at Leeds Rhinos, who were probably the blue chip team in rugby league, because he knew they were getting they were starting up their academy, and the Rhinos would always get the pick of the best young players. So to get that job would be a real, it'd be a plum job. So Paul recommended me to Dougie Lawton, who was the head coach, and he came along to meet me, and we met. And he actually offered me the job as his assistant, and I said no. I'd love to do the academy, because it'd be a great job to have with so many great young players, but also I was also conscious that I didn't know enough to jump in at senior level rugby and be a coach. And I think that's a lot. People fall for that too often. They aim too high before they're ready. Let their ambition and their ability get mixed up. And I wanted to try and learn and be successful away from the public eye. And it was a great decision. And he supported it. He said, look, to be honest, I want the second best coach at the club, with him being the best, to work with the young kids, because they're my future. He said, what you do with them will affect my longer term and the club's longer term health. So he allowed me to do the academy, and that was great. And like always, when you have a high profile job at any level within that academy system, that got me to be the Great Britain Academy coach, because obviously I had lots of great young players and we were being successful, which got me noticed by people at the governing body at the Rugby Football League. And like as I said to you, it's you just need people to know who you are and what you're capable of. And Robin and I have had this discussion many times when he was in Canada. It's having the patience and letting people, you don't have to go tell people what you can do, show people what you can do. And I took that approach, and that got me started. And then once the doors open, you have to show you have they've got what it takes to get through them. But it was a fortuitous start, but a great start for me.
Yeah, and I do love the education background as well. So many of the brilliant international rugby coaches come from that as well, and it's that helping the younger players come through and guiding them, as people also, which is so important. So your early career as coaching as well. I know you guided the Great Britain students team, right, to a gold medal at the World Games in Brazil. Can you reflect on that tour and having to deal with young kids? Obviously, they weren't paid professionals and stuff like that. But what was that experience like?
That was a strange one because we had a squad organised to go, and obviously I was working full time with England Rugby at the time, and they offered me this chance to take the team to Brazil, and recommendations came in, and we thought we were picking a gun squad that looked really good on paper, but as always happens with injuries and holidays and exams, people fell away, and we were one player short, would you believe, as we were preparing to go into camp before flying to Brazil. And Phil Llewellyn, I think, Robin, you might know him, he came over and worked in Canada just recently with BT. Phil was manager, and he said, look, there's a young kid at Gloucester University, he's great. He said, honestly, nobody's heard of it, but he's great. He'll come in and do a job. And when his name came up, the guys in the university system said, oh no, he's not good enough. It turned out to be Rory McConaughey, who's now running the tries in with Bath and went to England at the last World Cup. So Rory came, and he was green, but he smashing kids. He went on to play for England Sevens as well, obviously. But Rory ended up scoring 2 length of the field winners in the final, against France to win the gold medal. And he was. It sticks in my mind. It just shows that there are different ways to get to the top, and Rory's was a different one, but he took his opportunity when it came. But like anything, when you take over a team, you have to find out what it is that people want. I wanted to go there and win the gold medal, and I wanted to do it in the right way. But if the players were just wanting to go on a jolly and have a good time and a few beers and a great trip to Brazil, then maybe we might have to part ways. But I met with the team and I said, look, this is what we're going to do. It's 2 weeks of our lives. If we do it properly, it'll be a worthwhile trip, and we can have a great time as well. But let's focus on what we have to focus on before we get there. And I suppose no different with dealing with any team, with England, with Wales, with Samoa, Germany, whoever I've worked with, Canada. You set the ground rules, and the players buy in and agree. You can steer them into agreeing to anything if you can sell it in the right way. And we worked hard and had a great trip. And just like anything, and you end up, you win and you come back with great memories. And the couple of stories I have of that trip, I couldn't repeat publicly, but whenever we meet, we laugh about some great times we had. Yet we came back with a really professional performance and a gold medal.
Oh, that's phenomenal. We'll get you on a couple of jars for those stories another time.
Yeah. It's a shame. All the best stories in rugby are usually ones you could never repeat publicly. Yeah.
Most of those go back to my club days, not even my overseas days. But Damo, you've had a brilliant career coaching. You're still deep into it with Germany, and we've discussed for many years, but definitely over the last few months. Just want to give people perspective, and I know you've been on lots of podcasts and interviewed around the world, but just give insights. You've had an opportunity to work with many countries in 15s and 7s and in your own country. And for me, like coaching, obviously my experience in Mexico and France and Italy, as far as places I've lived and played, to echo what you said, you don't remember the games, you just remember the people, the places, and the things. But definitely there's different styles, and you've been successful in all those countries. So just kind of curious insight, what's it like coaching England? What's it like coaching Wales? What's it like coaching Spaniards, Samoans, Canadians, Germany? Because we're talking all walks of life, but I'll kind of go through each country, and then I'll ask you the same questions for each one. So let's start with in your native country, which is England. What was your role or roles when you were working with England?
Well, I was skills and defence coach with England Sevens, assistant coach, but that's what I focused on. That was a strange one because I found the players most of the players had a background in private school in England, so they were very confident young men, and I mean this in a nice way. It was different from from the rugby league background I stepped out of to go into rugby originally, and I found that they challenged everything, sometimes for no reason, and they not know-alls, but they felt they had a knowledge, and how you telling people and encouraging people. That was one of the first things I found there, that I had to, instead of being more directive and not being challenged as a coach, I found that they wanted to know the why more. So I had to think about a lot more about why. I knew why I was doing it, but then how to articulate that to the players so they understood. I think any coach, the best coach, is a great salesman. They can sell what they want to do. They sell their dream, their vision. They also sell how they want to get it done. And people, if they buy into it, will invest in that, just like they would invest in anything. So you have to articulate what you want to do that matches their outlook on life. So I had to think very carefully, and it took me a while. I didn't just do it, but you think about how do I approach this? And just as I have a thing about coaching, that there are three types of coach in sevens. We'll use it as sevens as an example. There's adopters, the people who adopt the way of playing that they see the big names do. They'll try and play like South Africa do or Fiji, because that's the thing. And it doesn't matter what sort of players they'll just adopt that way. Then there are followers who follow the base. This is how sevens is played, and they'll just follow the way they've been shown how to do it. And then there are the innovators who look at the players they have and the way the game could be played and work it out to suit their players. And I mean that culturally as well as in terms of their talent. So I've always taken that approach into each country. What is it they have? And, these are the ingredients. What's the best recipe that I can get a meal out of? That it'd be pointless for me here in Germany to try and play like Fiji, because everybody's 5'7" and not particularly big or fast. So we have to think of a way that, and that's not to decry the guys here, because there's some really good players, but that type of game wouldn't suit them. Samoa was a completely different kettle of fish, where everybody had a sidestep, everybody had a kicking game. But if there was someone to run into, they like to run into them. So you had to find a way to work the physicality of the game to also enhance their skills. So it's how you approach it.
So looking at let's dive into Wales here. What was it like coaching in Wales, and what was your favorite part about working with Wales?
Bizarrely, that was the most foreign place I've ever worked. And you may laugh, and everybody does. North Wales, where I was based, which is North Wales, takes up a third of the country. So all the rugby is based in the south, and North Wales, where George North comes from, for example, is almost like a barren wasteland. But it's also predominantly Welsh speaking. So Welsh is the first language. So a lot of the boys didn't speak English as a first language, and also like most Welsh, Scottish, or Irish, they hated the English with a passion. So me being an Englishman going in to be a head coach there was a challenge in itself. And particularly, we used to call it going out into bandit country. We used to go out to the local clubs at Batley and at Brofestiniog and other names that I couldn't even pronounce, but out into little villages where outsiders were, even in this modern age, outsiders were looked at with a bit of, not so sure about you. And for me to come in as an Englishman telling them, this is how we're doing things in North Wales these days, this is what we should do, was a real challenge. But also Canada caused me a great problem in Wales, because the North Wales team was being set up as a region, RGC it was called, Rugby Gogledd Cymru. And they set it up and brought, I think, a dozen Canadians. I'm sure that, I don't know if Cudmore was there, but I know Sean White and guys like that.
Jeb and Chauncey and
they all went over there, and so they used it as an exchange program, and all these Canadians played in the team, and the locals couldn't get in. So when I came in and said, look, the Welsh Rugby Union have decided now we're going to take this serious, we're going to make this region, we're going to push it up there to be the 5th region in Wales. They looked at me like I was some kind of, we've heard it all before, not interested, and you're English, and you won't pick any of us anyway. So I had to break down those barriers, and I had some good guys working with me, and we forged a great spirit there, and ended up being successful. And they got into the Premiership and had loads of success down the line. So it was a tough one, a really tough one to break down.
Even though, like, geographically for North Americans, you're from Northern England, so you weren't quite. I mean, it wasn't like you're from another planet. Or, you know, I went down and coached in Texas, and for a Canadian to go down to Texas and coach, for me, it was the most daunting thing ever, because I grew up watching American football movies. So here I was going down and guest coaching some American football, now rugby coaches that are ex-Marine, like legends with stars and flags on their shirts. And I'm just this little Canadian coming down, and definitely the last thing I ever wanted to do was impose myself. It was more of, you know, building a relationship and having to look at the lay of the land. But so for us North Americans, it's funny because you could drive to Wales in probably a few hours or a few days, depending on where you are in the country.
It was 2 hours from my house to Wales. But I mean, I may as well have flown to Samoa, which was 48 hours away. It's the UK is such a funny place. It's tiny in, you know, compared to where you guys live and operate. And yet you only have to go an hour before you could be in a foreign country or be treated as such, because the regions and, you know, how everybody speaks is different from place to place. And there's a rivalry, even within England, you know, Yorkshiremen and Lancashire's the next county to us, and we hate each other with a passion, but it's just one of those things that people don't like outsiders, do they? I think that's the thing. And one of the other challenges with going abroad is that usually you find if a country appoints an overseas coach, it's because they need them, yet they don't really want them. You know, they'd rather have someone of their own. And I've always found that's probably of all the things I've done going abroad and working, and I include Wales in that, you know, is overcoming that you're an outsider no matter what you do. And people will always want a Canadian in Canada or us. I mean, Samoa, that was the biggest thing about Samoa, you know. They needed outside help, but man, they did not want it. So that was hard to overcome.
And let's skip over to Spain. What was your role in Spain, and what was culturally your favorite part of that country?
So Spain was I talked about thinking about how you say things, but that was the first time I really coached in a foreign language, or you know, to people who couldn't. Some could speak English, others couldn't. And I was the skills and defence coach for the Spanish national 15s team. There was a little bit of money came into the Spanish game. They were backed by Rive, which was the national rail network. It was before the big financial crash in 2008 and 9, I think. And they decided they were ranked 32 in the world. They wanted to get to the top 20 and qualify for the World Cup. And we trained at Real Madrid's old training ground in the City of Football in Madrid, which was an amazing setup. I used to go over for 2 weeks and then go back home for a week, and they'd fly me in and out. And we had great success in the Six Nations B. But I had to learn to coach. Again, I had to think more about what I said. A little bit different from the England thing, where I had to think about the people I was speaking to. This time it was, you know, the nuances in what you say sometimes, or the inflections you'd put on words, or you'd assume that people understand what you were saying. But the guy who was interpreting for me was just being verbatim, you know, just saying it word for word, and there were some hilarious mix-ups. And so I had to think about, if I was going to speak, was it clear, was it concise? And I spent as much time preparing what I was going to say around what I was going to do, which ended up being a huge plus for me in, you know, the rest of my coaching life. Being concise, but making sure there was no room for misunderstanding. So it was, like always, I fall into that trap of learning a few words and think I can just fall into it, and then they answer me back and I'm finished. But I got there in the end. You know, I think anyway, people will buy into anyone, no matter how they speak or what language they speak, if they feel that you're giving them something that they want or need, and that you value what they do. I think your manner can put that across as much as your words as well.
What are your takeaways with Spanish rugby? What was it like coaching the Spanish culture? Because I know for me as a player, when I went to play in Italy, and I'm half Italian, everywhere I played in Canada before I left these shores, they didn't know how to deal with me because I was so crazy on the field. I was just like, a dog when it's been locked up all day and you let it loose. That was me on the field. They didn't know where I was going or where I was going to finish. And then I went to Italy, and I was the least craziest. They were all crazy and all over the field. So I was like, I'm home. I'm with a bunch of other crazy dogs. So what was it like coaching the Spaniards?
I suppose it should state the obvious. I was going to say the very Latin. You know, they were red-blooded and fiery, but full of flair, exactly like you think of them playing soccer, football. You know, but we had a great kicking game, I've got to tell you. But they like to play rugby as opposed to play set piece, you know, tactical Yeah, they like to make the ball do the work. And that worked for them in the situation they're in because, again, I go back to that followers, adopters, innovators. The head coach, Jed Glynn, was a guy who I worked with England A and England under-19s, and he got the job of director of rugby or technical director, I think it was, in Spain. He brought me across, and he had that mindset, that outlook. Let's use what we've got. It's pointless trying to take on Georgia and Romania, who were our rivals, in a dog-eat-dog fight, because there's only going to be one winner there. So we need to think about how we can use the flair and speed and agility of the team we had. So that was good to do. That was interesting. Didn't always work, but it had a positive effect in the end.
All right, let's skip across. You're probably not allowed to say your favorite, but I would probably just get to know your favorite is Samoa. Location. I think if I had an option to coach anywhere in the world, it would be in the South Seas. And I know it comes with its challenges, but the people, the culture, and the islands. So tell us about your Samoan experience.
I'd have to say that's the challenge is probably underestimating it. I think how I got the job was a strange. I actually saw it on Facebook, would you believe? And I had the craziest interview over a long distance telephone call. There's a guy called Terry Sands who runs Samurai, one of the great invitational team. And I was doing some work for him down in Bury St Edmunds, which is in the sort of southeast of England. I said, look, at 9:00 tonight, Terry, I've got a telephone interview with Samoa. He said, you can use the clubhouse office. He said, there's the phone. So at 9:00 I went in. At 1 a.m. we finished. They asked me a question. I'd launch into this long answer. And I can only bullshit for a small amount of time. I can't repeat it. And I'm talking away, and then I suddenly realised there was silence because the line had dropped. For about 8 questions, I don't think I got through one without them having to ring me back. It was. I should have known then that was a foretaste of things to come. I got the job, and I was the first ever foreigner to be selected to coach. It'd always been Samoans, and the Palangis are what they call, white men, outsiders. So I was the first Palangi, and boy, did they let me know. And going back to that, they needed me there, but they didn't want me. There were a lot of people on the board of directors. Rugby's king there. It's only a tiny place. Have you ever been? There's only 180,000 people live in Samoa, and on 179,000 are expert rugby people. Everybody had an opinion. Every shop, every restaurant, every bar, even in church. I'm a Catholic. I used to go to Mass on Sunday, this cathedral in Apia. And the priest would always mention at the end, Coach, I know you're at the back there. We need to work on the breakdown this week. Everybody wanted to say something. And that was just, if you ever wonder what it's like to be in a boy band, get a job as the coach of Fiji or Samoa, because you cannot go anywhere without someone wanting a selfie with you. And for me, with white hair, I was the only person on the island with white hair. I couldn't blend in it. I just had it everywhere. And also, you were either a hero or you were a loser. There was no middle ground. If you won, you were fantastic. If you lost, no matter what the context, whether it was injuries, if you played New Zealand, we played New Zealand with Sonny Bill and everybody in, and we didn't win. And you think, we killed the firstborn baby of every Samoan. There was just no, they expected to win, which is bizarre for such a tiny place with no professional rugby background to bring players through. It was just people out of the villages. So it was a really difficult thing. Not the boys. The boys race. I thought, just like you, I thought, I can't wait to get there. Now there is some talent to work with. It's not the players. It's what comes with it that's hard to handle. And Sir Gordon, we had some great chats, me and him, sharing things that was happening to him that happened to me, because I was someone he could speak to about it. The interference from outside. The Prime Minister's chairman of the board, he used to come with his security detail and sit in the gym every morning on a bike and just pedal and watch, and then tell someone else to tell me that who should be in the team. He thought, honestly, again, I was only there 18 months, but it'd take me about 10 beers to tell you the first 2 months just on its own. There was just some crazy.
Hit me with dive into what it was like your first few sessions and how you built the team. So
Samoan culture. Now Samoa's completely different to anywhere else, and you go there with your own Western values and a first world way of living. And they live a completely different life. And you've got to be careful you don't judge it as bad against your good. The high performance unit, which was a joke, calling it that was just a joke, because the pitch was like the fairground when the fairs left town. It just pieces of glass, stones, rocks. There was a few rugby balls and a couple of torn bibs, and that was it. There was no equipment, no facilities, and the players all looked like they'd been beaten, like a dog, because adults are given respect, they don't earn respect, and their word is law, and they just, it's all directed, telling the players, and they're not allowed to look adults in the eye. There's a thing about, they all keep their head down. So when I went to speak to them, it looked like they were all sat with their heads down, and no one would look at me, and I tried, no one would get a response, because it's not about talking back. So I had to deal with not that that's wrong, that's just that's their life and how things are. And I had to understand that and get to know that, and then try and draw them out and get them to, because as a coach, as a player, you want two-way conversations. You want them to let you know how they're thinking, and do they agree, don't they agree? And by the end, before I got sacked, at the end we agreed. It was, we had meetings, and they'd offer opinions, but that first thing was really hard, because they'd obviously been on a losing streak, and they'd been hammered by coaches. I think 2 and 3 hour sessions were the norm, and so I was coming with a completely different approach, and I'm more of a loving, kissy, touchy, feely type of person, and I wanted to, build relationships, and that was really hard to break down.
And what about life on the islands? What about life in paradise, as far as the scenery?
Well, you'd have to ask my wife. That was her favourite time of her life. I mean, it's Samoa is as close to paradise, the Garden of Eden, I think, as you get. If you've never been, I mean, Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, all just beautiful places. Coconuts just hanging off the trees, and bananas, and fresh fruit, and clear waters all the way around. There's a huge reef all the way around the island, so white sands. It's just beautiful. If you could live there without the rugby, it'd have been absolutely fantastic. But it was, and the people I can't speak highly enough about the people. Everybody laughed, and so I soon worked out, if you could make them laugh and got them laughing, you could get all sorts done. You like I said again, you don't adopt or follow. Just look at what you've got and work out what you need and how you can get it. And that was a thing. We laughed, and just thinking about that now, I'm not thinking about the games. I'm thinking about some of the, just them sat laughing, and they'd laugh at anything.
So you basically, after a Sevens World Series, let's say you didn't win the tournament, you have to come back with some new jokes,
Oh, the joke was the trouble. When we played in London in a series, it took us a week to get home. We missed a flight, and nobody from the Samoan Rugby Union was available on the phone, and you just laugh at some things. The biggest, there was a watershed moment in my time in Samoa. We missed out on Olympic in the Oceania. We got absolutely hammered by Tonga, which put me on the back foot right from the start. And then we went to Cape Town and Dubai, and we won the Shield for whatever, the 12th, 13th place, And then we went to Wellington and Australia. And again, it was different players in each time. I was trying to find a combination that worked. And we finally went to Los Angeles and Vancouver on that trip. And again, to go from Apia, the capital of Samoa, to Vegas is 8 hours in a straight line. It took us 2 days to get there. So we had it's one of these ridiculous travels we had. And I could see we had some new players there, and it was getting everybody down. And we beat Fiji in the first game, the first time Fiji had ever been beaten in pool play in 3 or 4 years. And we absolutely smashed them. It was fantastic. And then we went and lost the next game and lost 3 players with concussion. And I said, look, we need to pull ourselves together. And every time we were sat in the changing room, every other team, you guys have been around it, there's rock music blaring out, and they're all playing them, to get themselves up. And we had this, it was either church music, because religion's a big thing, as you know, for the islanders, or this sort of, that sort of, flimsy dance. I'm doing arm movements here, but that sort of wavy South Pacific music, and man, you could fall asleep in our
chill music.
Oh yeah. Man, even it was colder than chill. So I got the boys in my bedroom after day one. I said, what can we do? We need to we need to do something here. Is there anything we can do? And Alex Samoa, who was living in New Zealand, he said, look, I'm at the Maris Club. We play this music before we play in our local club. He said, it's great. So I said, right, let's try it. And you may have heard, if you've ever been around Samoans over the last few years, well, this is how it all started. He brought this track in, and the last thing before we went out on the field, they put this on and they had this chant, and it changed our season in an instant. We ended up winning the play. We beat New Zealand with Sunnyvale and everybody in. We smashed USA in Vancouver. We beat them in Singapore. We went on this great run, and I put it down all to this because it changed their mindset in an instant. You're looking for the button to press, and you just can't find it, and there it is under your nose. It was just that. So I'm going back to that. They love to laugh, but they love to sing and dance. Man, they love that, and that got them ready. That once that started, wherever we did in the hotel. We had a meeting, and then they'd do this, and it got them all in. And it was, I'd have never have found it, but they just brought it to me, and it changed life immensely.
What's the song? You got to tell us. We got to find out.
It's a track. I'll send. I'll WeTransfer it to you because I'll show it in the dressing room. But you can see the faces. What gives it away? Watch the faces rather than listen to the thing, because they all get into it, and it connects them all in an instant. It's in Samoan, some of the chants, but you get the idea, and it's really upbeat, but the faces changed. And, I try and give them the pep talk before we're going out to get going, and it didn't really have an effect. This, got them in, you were winning. Whatever works, whatever floats their boats, I was on it.
Well, you're so right. It's fascinating to hear these stories from different countries and what, to get the best out of your team, so that's remarkable. Well, let's switch across then to Canada, right? So, what was that journey like for you in terms of, how was rugby perceived when you got there? Again, another outsider leading a country that has a rich history with rugby.
Well, I think I fell into the same problem I came into Samoa. I met the team in Florida at camp because my visa wasn't through. So they organised a camp in Florida so I could go there till my Canadian visa arrived within the next few days. My flight got in first, so I'm sat in the airport in Sarasota waiting for them to come in to this little airport. And I could see the faces as they come through. It was half the guys had retired after the disaster of not qualifying for the Olympics in Rio, and they'd had an even disastrous World Series. I think they hadn't won a game for 3 tournaments, something ridiculous. The previous coach and the players hadn't had a great relationship. And I could see the faces as they came through. It was more, we have to be there, and I'm not so sure it's going to be a great idea. Who's this guy coming in? Who is he? What's he done? And Nate Riyama even told me, and he said, I had to Google you. I had no idea. He said, I thought, who is this guy coming through? And I could see the face. I thought, I've been here before in Wales. I've been here before in Samoa, where people aren't that bothered about you and you're going to have to do something. So we went down the same route there. I had to get them to buy into what we wanted to do and sell them the dream and show them some love, and that I valued what they did. And everybody wants the players to trust them, but I let the players know that I trust them implicitly right from the start. They have to do something for me to lose that trust. And so if I can give that to them, and I tried that, with the Canadians straight away, and there's some great guys there who, I still keep in touch with all the Canadian boys still. And it was the start of a great journey for us. It was, it was. And again, even though we had some great times on the field, I can hardly remember any of the games, but I can remember lots of the off-field things and the things we did. So yeah, it was good times there.
And then raising the profile, that must be very important too. When obviously, if you're a country like Samoa that love rugby, that's understandable. But when you're in Spain, Canada, or Germany, how do you, as the head coach, kind of inspire that next generation of players and kind of raise the profile of the game?
That's a great question, and I think that's the thing that lots of these governing bodies struggle to do, and I don't think they do it properly. They have ready-made, particularly with the sevens, which can give you fantastic action clips. It's perfect bite-sized rugby to sell, particularly to younger people. We tried to do it in Canada. Callum Ramsey made me a great little promotional video to send out, with the hits, the tries, the cups, anything that can sell it. And for Samoa, it was different because that is life there. So you didn't have to sell rugby to anybody. For Canada and Germany, it's where there's another 2 or 3 sports that are king. Then you have to think of, how can I do that? putting it out on social media is not enough because everybody does that. So use the strengths you have. And even here in Germany, there are 4 or 5 players who've been around for a long time, and there's at least 2 or 3 would grace World Series without a shadow of a doubt and be good, if not standout players. But no one else will ever have heard of them, and unless you can see them play. And we have to find a way, to get them out there, get them playing and sell it. We're lucky here in Germany. We have a guarantee of free-to-air TV. If we could get into the World Series, it'd be on terrestrial TV at prime time. But of course, that's not we have to qualify. We have to be good enough to get on there. So we need exposure in that way. But I know that could be a game changer for rugby full stop in Germany. Imagine that I think the viewing figures in Germany, Austria and Switzerland were the biggest in the world on the last 15s World Cup. Funny enough, from the figures that came out. There's a huge appetite for rugby here because it's different, but it's also exciting, and there's no preconceived ideas about it being anything but an exciting sport. So we just have to sell it better and find a way. Canada always not upset me, it's the wrong word, but it always made me shake my head because TSN would show curling or something, on 4 different channels at the same time, and yet rugby was there, it was available, and it's such a fantastic sport, and some great players in Canada across the country, and North America. I think the US is maybe getting more traction with that. The MLR, I hope that really opens everyone's eyes to what's available, because TV is the thing that could sell it.
Well, you're so right. Just to cut in there, Robin, about the TV, right? You mentioned Germany. The same here in the US is rugby's been behind a paywall for many years, and so if you're watching, the Sevens World Series or the US national team, you don't really get to see the idols and the women's team carving up, or the men. But now with Major League Rugby being on 2 different networks on national television, people will flick the channel and will be intrigued, because the perception here in the US, and Robin can touch on the perception in Canada, but perception here is that, wow, rugby is a crazy dangerous sport because you're not wearing any pads, because they're so used to the football. And so if they get to see that, they're like, wow, this is really exciting. I don't know what's going on, but I like what I see.
Yeah. And that's why I know so many governing bodies, or the old stages within governing bodies, are very anti-sevens because they see it as a threat, not as the positive thing it can be. Because I think if sevens brings people into rugby, who cares, as long as it gets them into rugby? Because rugby is everything, and everybody loves instant gratification at the moment. Don't they? It's the way of the world, and bite size, and sevens gives you that in spades. Robin brought me Tavon Campbell from the Rough Riders to come and play. He came over to BC Place for the World Series leg there as a guest of the Canadian Rugby. Robin brought him over. He'd never seen rugby before, had he, apart from throwing a ball with Robin. And he was blown away. He couldn't believe it. We took him to Hong Kong, which is, if you're going to sell rugby to anybody, you're on a winner there. But it grabs people, even if it's not their main sport. Wow, this is fantastic. I didn't even know this happened. And, I just feel we missed a trick if we could find it. And it's ridiculous. You have to pay sometimes to get your sport onto TV. But I would have thought somewhere a TV executive would think, wow, this could sell here. We could use this and be a niche sport to begin with, but then grow. But that's just my opinion.
Speaking of Tavon, it's funny you talk about TV and visually seeing it, because the first time I ran out of the gym to corner him, because I was guest coaching at a football camp and I met him, but I didn't really follow football. And then I did my homework on him, and I was coaching at the University of Regina, and he walked by, and Damian and them were in Las Vegas at the time. They're coming to the Vancouver Sevens the next week. So I ran out the door and cornered him on like a Tuesday and started just spitting sevens at him, and he just kind of ran away. And he's a bit faster than me. And then 2 days later at our next session, he was out there, but I pulled out my phone this time and I started showing him highlights of the World Series. That got his hook, called Damo. But until they visually see it, and I just said to Damian and Brian, can we get him to Vancouver next week? Because it's the only way to sell him is to get him in BC Place. And he took a red eye after the Canadian. He was still in university at the time, and he was competing for the track team. So he took a red eye. He was falling asleep half the day, but he got enough of the taste of it when Canada played and the stadium erupted. And Damian was bold enough to, he'd never touched a rugby ball, and he got flown to Hong Kong, and that trip seemed to work out well for selling him on the game. But even, Damian, the thing that I really appreciate about Damian is he got across the country. So, they make history. They won the Singapore Sevens. He gets off a plane. He catches a ferry. He catches a ferry, goes to St. George's on the mainland in the pissing rain, and then comes up to Cowichan and coaches in the snow. Here's a guy that, was a foreigner, but he actually got on the ground. And people across any country, they want to see their team successful. And when you talk about selling, what I know from being business, everything's on their phone, everything's fast, everything's quick. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that human aspect. And if you can get across the country, and Damian, I don't know how many times you went to Ontario. For those listeners that are not from North America, it's like a 6-7 hour flight across Canada. And that's not even Eastern Canada, that's Central Canada. Gone to Saskatchewan at all times of year and connected. So you have to actually show up. And I kind of took those best practices from you mentoring me at the time and got on planes across Mexico and tried to replicate that. But what was that experience like, Damo, to fly across Canada and connect with different people?
You're right. I had no idea how big it was until I got there. It was difficult because you're right. You have to get out there and connect with people because you want to sell the game. As much as I wanted to coach the senior team to be successful, I also wanted to make sure that when I left, it was in a better shape than when I left it. And if we could get people on board with the Sevens program and see that there's a way forward, because often, I'm sure it's the same anywhere in the world, you see the senior team on TV and you think, I could never get there. But if you can go out and explain how it's possible, what you need to do, these are things that we work on. Let them know that the stars don't do anything different from the young. It's the same practices, the same drills, just maybe done at a little different speed and level. But so you have to go out and tell them and connect. And, I just like to, I love to do it. I do it here in Germany. I've done it wherever I've gone. I just like to get out and meet people. And I must admit, it was harder work than I anticipated. Flying to Ontario or flying out to Newfoundland, and which was like going to Samoa from England. I thought that was as far as I could go. But no, it was hard work because every weekend when you could really just sit and put your feet up, you could get on a plane and go. But it was worth it. It was worth the effort. Always worth the effort. I loved it, and I got to meet so many great people and a place that I'd never see ever again. And so that on its own was worth it.
And I know you've touched on a bit about sevens, but if you look back in your career coaching, all the 15 teams you have, rugby league, rugby union, and then of course sevens. What appeals you to the shortened version of the game?
Well, the thing that I love about sevens most of all is it's as close to rugby league, I think, as rugby union will ever get. The set piece. I've learned to love the set piece in rugby union. The scrum and line out having worked at Leicester Tigers for 2 years, where the scrum and line out was a thing of beauty, I was told, and the driving maul was one of their main attacking weapons. I've come to understand and love that part of the game, but at times it can overcome everything, and it's great for the people involved, but the people watching, I'm sure, think it's not the best game to sit through. Sevens is different because there's always an outcome, I always feel. And, the skills are on show, the great tackles, the great offloads, the great passes, great sidesteps, handoffs. There's some outrageous skills done under pressure at great speed. So I love that. I love that side of things. I find it much, I'm much more curious about how I can make it better or, be more innovative and look at things differently. So, but I just love rugby, full stop. If someone, if a team was opening an envelope somewhere, I'd turn up to watch them do it just to see if there was anything new. But I just like to watch people work and I love to watch games, and I'll never change, I hope. So.
Well, that passion comes through, and I think that's what separates people who are good at what they do and others who are just phoned it in. Let's talk about a couple of special moments in the world of sevens and with you at the helm. So the stat is that you're one of only 3 people to have coached 2 different countries to World Series Sevens titles. And of course, those were the teams that you had outside of the top tier, if you will, of World Rugby. So could you touch on that 2 special moments in time? First, the Paris title for Samoa, and then the Canadian title winning the Singapore Sevens.
Now, there are 2 games I can remember. I can remember those vividly, funnily enough, from everything. I'm not surprised, but only because of what they meant more than anything else. To go to Samoa first, they'd been World Series champions in 2009 or 10. And they had this golden generation of players, and that set the stall for a small island to expect to win every game from then on. And of course, all those great players, like all those islanders who went off to teams in Europe and wherever to play. And the next group came through, fell flat, and I think they hadn't won a World Series title since 2011, and it was 2016 now, and we won our first 2 pool games comfortably in Paris. I think we put 50 points past Wales. We were playing well, and the last game of the day was Fiji to decide who came first or second, and we got absolutely smashed. And I don't mean, they outplayed us. They just walked over the top of us. And Ben Ryan had brought together his Olympic squad. There was all the big star names were there, all the beasts from the top 14 teams in France. They had an amazing team. And it really was men against boys. I thought it was touch and pass at first because we just couldn't get close to them. And they ran tries in, and we were lucky to get nil. I think it was 40-something nil. We were lucky to get nil, believe you me. So we went back to the hotel that night, and the assistant coach blew his top, which is the Samoan way, went to blame every point of finger, and I was expecting a letter to come. We usually got facts from the Prime Minister saying I would let the country down. There was always some. So I got the players together, and we had South Africa in the quarterfinals next day, who were favourites alongside Fiji to get a win in that tournament. The other thing I've always found is about self-belief and how, to make people believe that, things aren't as bad as they seem. So I picked things out of the video and worked it out to show them that it wasn't because they were better than us, it was because we'd done all these things wrong. And that, it's only because we did this that they scored that try. And I had to use a bit of poetic license, but I convinced them it was because of our mistakes, not because they were better than us. And but tomorrow when we play South Africa, these are our, but they'll want to smash it. We can smash them better. And it was all about self-belief, and that's all I talked to them about. Believe in yourself, and does everybody understand? And they got the dance on before the game, and they absolutely smashed South Africa. And I mean that in actual way. The physicality, and how physical South Africa are, and that's a big part of their game, as well as being fabulously talented players. Their physicality beats a lot of teams. Samoa took them on up front and absolutely destroyed them. I mean, they absolutely bashed them, as only they can when they're on that. And so we beat them, and suddenly there was the shoulders went back. Yeah, I could see it. And, we were on a roll, so I had to keep them going. Argentina next, and Argentina are always a hard team to play whenever, because you can never shake them off. And they had their Rio squad there, because it was that just before it was the last but one tournament before the Olympics, so everybody had their main squad ready. We somehow, Argentina with a 2v1 to score on the hooter, the guy with the ball dummied and went and ran into Falaminga Seliseli, our captain, who's built like the side of a wall, and he cut him in half and he dropped the ball over the line, and the hooter went and we won and we were in the final. But they got so carried away. I mean, you think, because we got to the final, you think we'd won. It was just joyous scenes, and Deb rang me from Samoa to say, she said, you should see it here. There's fireworks. Everything's going off in the villages. And we came to the final, and we were 26-0 down at half-time. The same thing, because I think we played our final in the semi-final, and Fiji came out and did exactly the same thing to us in that first half that they did in the pool game. So at half-time, I'm doing it again. There's a thing. I'm just going around like this. Make your tackles. Billy, he's not as good as you. I went around them all, and they would kick off, and I can see it now. The ball bounced, and when you get one of those where you think it's going to bounce one way, but it bounced to us. One of those only rugby balls can do. We got possession and scored, and we scored again, and then suddenly this all-conquering Fiji team were a little bit rattled, and the boys, you could see almost again that we're with a chance here. That self-belief, it's an amazing thing. And they ran in. We got a try with like 40 seconds to go to make it 29-26 to Samoa. Unbelievable. And then, as only Fiji can do, they caught the kick-off and offloaded all the way down the field to the corner. And I think Belgium Tua Tangaloa threw everything in the kitchen sink at Kolini Sau in the corner, and he spilled the ball over the line, and it went to the did he drop it? And he said, yeah, he dropped it. So amazing scenes. And apparently it was, back in Samoa, it was like, the 4th of July and everything wrapped into one. It was, 4 a.m. and people were out banging pots and pans and horns going.
Say, were you promoted to, president of the country for that weekend?
Well, I didn't realise, but there were moves afoot already to replace me, because a couple of people on the board of directors wanted to have their man in, because rugby was a source of power and status in Samoa. So, they wanted to have influence on the team. So they were going to give me a title, like an honorary title when I got back, but it all got lost in the politics of stuff. But it was just enough it kept me going in the job, and the players just, we had a terrible week the following week in London, because the emotional high just became a huge drop off, and it was fantastic. I was just pleased for the country, because they love their rugby so much, and everything revolves around rugby, and they often miss out on things, and it was a great feeling, and it made life easier in the supermarket for a few weeks when I got back home. Instead of being told that Selly's not fast enough, or he's not good enough and you need to pick him, everybody was happy for a while.
And the thing about sevens is it's so competitive that it is so tough to finish off and win a tournament, and to be able to do that, with Samoa. I know they'd won the series, but many, many years ago, so that was so great. So switching across to Canada, because Canada were in a similar boat where they had played really well at times, but hadn't quite got through there. So let's talk about that Singapore Sevens.
Well, again, we were on a roll though. Then we started the year really well. We got a 4th place finish in New Zealand, and lost a few guys for injury in Australia, so that it sort of tempered it a little bit. But we had a really strong home leg in Vancouver. I think we got into the quarterfinals. We did in Las Vegas, so we started to get quarterfinals regularly. Whereas the year before they made no quarterfinals, and I think they finished something like 2 points off relegation, something ridiculous like that. They'd been struggling. So again, it's amazing how a little bit of success brings self-belief, and it rolls, and you have to keep it going. And we had a bit of an off time in Hong Kong, but we made the quarterfinal again. So we went to Singapore, and the same thing. We cruised our first 2 pool games. In fact, so easily. Isaac Kay had been suspended for 2 matches, and I didn't even replace him in the squad. I just went with 11 and brought him in because we were confident we were playing some really good rugby. So to decide who finishes top of the group and who finishes second, who do we have but Fiji again? And same thing, we got absolutely smashed. And again, same thing, 35s. But this was a bit different. We could and should have done so much better. We made breaks and dropped the ball. And, it's like with Fiji, they pick it up and they hurt you no matter what, if you lose the ball. So everybody was a bit down. And for the first, I think it was the first and only time I really gave them a round of the houses, because I felt they were so much better than that. And, I expected more from them. They should expect more from themselves, blah, blah, blah. So we played New Zealand in the quarterfinal, and we beat them easily, 35, something like that. We played some fabulous rugby, and we blew them away, which very few teams do to New Zealand. We played England in the semi-final, and they'd been playing well. I think they'd beaten Australia or whoever were going well in the tournament, and we beat them for the first time for a long time, and played some great rugby under pressure. Then we had the USA in the final, and they were obviously the favourites. They were playing some great stuff. Perry was running tries in for fun as he always does, but they had that core of a great team with players that make them tick. And we got off to an amazing start. We were 19-0 up in, I think, before people had even taken the seats. We blew them away. But as always, the great thing about sevens, we got the ball back from that kickoff as well. So we were 19-0 up, and we had the ball, and we were and we had them on the back foot, and we knocked on at a breakdown. They picked it up, and Perry Baker raced away and scored. And the momentum shifted in an instant. And right on half-time, they made it 19-12. And so we went at half-time. They were on the front foot, we were on the back foot. So again, it's about that, self-belief. We have to, we've done it once, we can do it again. If we need to just get that. We get the ball, and we always just, because with Canada, apart from Justin Douglas, we didn't have a great deal of speed. So our game was built on possession. The longer we hold it, the more chance we have of scoring. And let's not fall into the trap of trying to score. So we had this in our minds. We go out, we kick off, they catch it, Perry Baker scores under the post, it's 19-0. It's only going to end one way. And they came again and they got penalty. And there's a most amazing tackle that Harry Jones and I think it's Mike Fullifau do on one of their guys. He's about to score in the corner. He could have passed to Perry, who'd have walked in, goes on his own, and somehow they get underneath him just as he scores. And the referee gives held up. It's a scrum to US on on our 5 metre line, and we win the scrum against the head, against the odds. And we end up holding the ball, and Lucas Hammond scores. And it's just about, there's 40-some seconds to go, and we have to try and get the ball back. And the referee, our touch judge, gives a dodgy line out to us, from a ricochet that I'm sure Mike keeps telling me was never. But and again, the first thoughts at the end were for Brian Hunter, the manager, and Danielle and Callum, the physio and the analyst who've been there through the thick and mostly thin. And the players who worked so hard and never thought they could get anywhere near. It was a great feeling for that alone. Just like it was, I felt it for the people of Samoa. I was so pleased for them. I was just so pleased for those guys because, for John Moonlight, it was just a culmination of all. Robin, I went Dallen, as well. All those times you're on the back end of a beating, or you push down into the bowl of a shield, and you're watching the big guys just go on, and you're just a forgotten thing. Those guys stepped out the shadows into the light and showed that they were worthy of being there. And so it was just great to be part of that thing. And Fiji played a part in both of them, but in a negative way. They just kept hammering me. They were 2 great times, really, really great times.
It was. It's definitely a fond memory for me as a longtime, obviously, supporter and alumni and coach. It's. I'm always just a fan. So I was, like you say, I was just so happy with the boys and guys like Nate that have been in the team 48, 56 years. So, and then mostly for all those young kids across Canada to believe, everything's impossible until it happens. Right. And so that changed the culture and coupled with, obviously, Vancouver Sevens in a BC place now, and we got thousands of kids watching, and it's big things. And then they'll just kind of circle back on the USA and the TV stuff. Like, we always want the US to be successful now, as long as they're not playing Canada, because our televisions are their shows. So it's, if North America is successful, then that's viable for both countries and our Caribbean countries too. So yeah, that was those are great memories, and I'm sure the boys will love to listen to that as well. So just going forward with Germany, what are your goals going forward, and how's the team doing essentially?
Well, the big goal it's an Olympic funded sport. So the German Olympic Association funds the sevens program. And so qualifying for the 2024 Olympics is the major goal. Obviously, for the players, just to get onto the World Series and play a World Series game. A lot of them have been in the team for 8-9 years. This would be a great chance, one last hurrah for them at 29, 30 years old to play on that world stage, and they are good enough to play at that level. We won the Challenger tournament in Chile back in about a year ago. We beat Japan, and without a full strength team. So there is whilst there's a huge depth there, there's some very good players, and they're the current European champions as well, which people forget. They're a team of, I suppose it's a bit like the Cars. They're a very efficient, very hard-working, very reliable bunch, and my job is to make that, how can I take that and make it into a success, and we're working on a way of playing that suits that. We've no speedsters, we've no big, powerful guys. What we have is a bunch of, Robin, how much I put on catch and pass. We've got players who can catch and pass and tackle, and they can work incredibly hard, and they love a system. The Germans love a system. They love a way. They like to buy into it. This is the way we're going to do it. We have a little bit of free rein within that, but again, it's getting a way that works for them and their talent. But just like Canada, just like Samoa, just like everywhere, the off-field politics are a hamper. I suppose that's the world over, isn't it? There's nothing. The president said to me just after Christmas, he said, "I must apologise for the political situation here." I said, "Man," it's nothing. It's the same every country in the world. There's always issues off the field, but the game can grow. We need television. Television is the answer to so much. I think for us, particularly in Germany, it could open the gates to sponsorship as well as to potential players.
Yeah, Damon, I agree 100%. I got a little backstory for you. So when you won that Challenger Series, right, there was an English commentary version of your game. And I actually called the game from a little TV screen, well, my computer actually, in Las Vegas at the Sandboyd Stadium. After I'd commentated a Major League Rugby game, there was a window of opportunity. So I was in touch with World Rugby and they wanted English commentary because they had local Spanish voices, but nothing in English. So after my Major League Rugby game, I quickly hopped into a separate room where nobody was, pulled up my team sheets. The German names were fairly similar to Afrikaans in, the Dutch South African. Yeah. So I could at least give it a go and throw in something there. But it was, I remember that game clearly. And I remember commentating it. I didn't see any of the build-up games because I was doing another game. So if you ever find that English commentary, I'd like to see if I've got their names at least right.
So you learn something new every day. I didn't realize that. That's awesome. Yeah.
So Damo, we've had John Tate on and a few other Andy Friend and a few other your colleagues around the world, and all great coaches, all great men, and whether they're men or women coaches, there's somebody at home that is your biggest cheerleader. And I know myself, it's patience and support, but just an opportunity to talk about your lovely wife, Deb. I had an opportunity to work with her with the junior national side. She was my manager, and obviously just, she joined you in a lot of your travel across Canada. How vital has Deb been in your life and in your coaching career and your travel partner?
The saying "happy wife, happy life," and it's a truism. She loves what I do, and she loves supporting what I do. She gets worked up. I could never sit and watch a game with her because she lives and breathes every second of every team I'm coaching. Every game, and she mothers the players, but she just enjoys meeting people. But she also keeps me grounded as well, because rugby's great, but it's the far more important things in life. And sometimes when it gets on top of you, or you come back and you complain about things, she's great at bringing me back to reality and pointing out what really is important. But when times are tough, it's great to come back to someone who understands what you're going through and can help support you. And like you said, she travelled across Canada wherever she could with me, and did the same in Samoa. Wherever I went, she liked to come with me. And she's been over to Germany 2 or 3 times, but she's working in the UK at the moment, so she doesn't get to do that often. But without her, it wouldn't be worth doing. So she's too important to lose.
And then that's a great point. Happy wife, happy life. We all live by that as well. What personally motivates you from day to day? What are you chasing?
Well, I'm coming towards the end of my career rather than near the beginning. And every day I realise there's more and more I don't know. So I love finding articles or seeing things where it sort of pricks me into thinking about things in a different way, or looking at things in a different viewpoint. So that's, learning something. I just love to find different ways to look at the game, or to hear someone's different viewpoint. That's one of the great things about podcasts is listening to people's take on something similar you're doing yourself, or things we're all involved in, but not everybody sees it the same, and everybody has a different way of doing things. And I those people that say this is the way to do it, you have to do this, and they're so wrong, because everybody has a different view and a different take. And I love to see everybody's different ways. Take the good things, or things that I think can work, and try and use it myself, because we all have to stay fresh, don't we? Whatever the three of us do, if we just got and did the same old all the time, it stops being something we love. And I just love that, being curious about what's possible and what could we do and where could we take it. So that keeps me going. As soon as that stops, then I'll get the feet up on the settee back in Yorkshire and fall asleep and relax.
Well, that's great advice for all the Rugby Hive listeners, the coaches, the players. Curiosity is so important. And then, Damian, to put you on the spot here, you don't need to choose all 12, but if you could think across the players you've coached, the Sevens players, who would you put in your ultimate dream team, if you will?
Oh, I couldn't do that, because, it's not, there's star players in every team, but every player in every team's always been my favourite. I've loved every player. So the hardest thing as a coach is not being able to pick somebody, who's trained hard all week or all that session, and you can't take them because you feel that the squad's strongest. So now I'd pick a squad of 190 or something, so I could get more or less everybody.
That's fair enough. And I knew you would say something along those lines, which is great. Yeah. If you look back, are there a couple of players that do stand out in the opposition that you've prepared for? And you mentioned in the USA, you're like, well, if Perry Baker gets the ball, we know he's away. Are there a handful of players that have stood out to you over the years that you know have always been huge threats that you've prepared for?
Oh, you could say that about any of the South Africans or, Fijians. I wouldn't know where to start. There are so many great Fijians out there. And but even going back to when I first started with England back in 2001, when Richard Hortner went on to be a referee, he could get you out your seat to watch him play. Hugo Monnier came along then, and they're just Henry Paul, Benny Gollins, and Simon Amo, when they were pulling the strings with England, were fabulous. And that New Zealand team of the time in the early 2000s was almost untouchable. The great man himself, Sir Eddie, and William Ryder. Oh, man. You see, once you start thinking, you could just keep trotting them out. Never mind, we haven't even got to the modern day players who are just doing some incredible things that are just out of the solar system at times.
Yeah, I know your list could go on and on because your resume is longer than Pinocchio's nose.
More clubs than Jack Nicklaus. Yeah,
exactly. Well, listen, Damian, I just want to thank you so much for your time. Your insights have just been superb, particularly talking about the different cultures, the different countries, and the journey that rugby has taken you on. And I just want to say, obviously, all the best with Germany from Robin and myself. We will look forward to seeing you on the road. And in the words of John Cleese, the Germans are coming.
I hope so. And when they do, I'll see you there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Good, pal.
Pleasure's all mine. It's been great to relive some good moments there. Yeah.
So many.
Okay,
Great
thanks, guys.
Cheers,
Appreciate it. See you. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers, buddy.
Beautiful ball over the top. Yes, Seppo!
Thank you for listening, you sleek sensations.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to Rugby Hive Podcast and catch us on all the socials at Rugby Hive.
We appreciate your support. Be safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
They've taken the lunch money from South Africa. And